all these immigrants that came over to this country at the beginning of the 20th century have a story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
So I came up with the story of dot, dot, dot. And the three dots signify all the untold stories that are
Mm-hmm.
yet to be told.
Welcome to Story Power, a bi-monthly podcast where my guests and I chat about stories and creativity in all different styles and formats. My name is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, and my goal is to promote what Dale Carnegie stated in his famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He said, instead of condemning people, let's try to understand them. Let's try to figure out why they do what they do. That's a lot more profitable and intriguing than criticism, and it breeds sympathy, tolerance, and kindness. To know all is to forgive all. It's my firm belief that the goal of most creative people is to try to understand themselves and others. That's what makes artwork of all kinds so compelling. But more than that, the personal stories of my guests promote understanding as well. Roger C. Schenck, a cognitive scientist, said, human beings are not ideally set up to understand logic. They are ideally set up to understand stories. It's my hope that Story Power will help us understand each other better by sharing the stories of my guests. Today is episode 90, and I'm talking with Shirley Novack. And Shirley has just written a novel, or I guess you've just published it recently.
A year ago.
A year ago. Oh, so this is good. We want to promote this book. And it's called The Story of Ellipses, dot, dot, dot. So I love talking to authors and reading their books, although I'm quite behind on reading my guests' books. I just finished one, and now I've got two or three more in the queue. So tell about your book, Shirley.
Well, I've always written, but I've never published. And the things that I've written are like short stories, poetry, things like that.
Uh-huh.
But my father passed away in 1984, and I
Oh,
found out certain things about him after he died,
uh-huh.
and they were very troubling. And the story was very unusual. Uh, the three dots in the title represent all the immigrants that came over in the beginning of the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
They all have a story.
Yeah.
Everyone has a story that came over from
Mm-hmm.
Eastern Europe. My father's what, so that's what the three dots are for, just, everyone's story. Anyhow, my father was born in Koretz, Poland in 1904. And his father was one of the
Oh.
meanest, nastiest people you would ever want to meet. I mean, he was horrible. And when my father was 12 years old, his mother, who was lovely, died. And his father sent he and his 9-year-old brother to go live in the care of a brothel and said, I'm going to, yeah, I'm going to America. And when I have enough money, I'll send for you. It took 3 years for his father to send for him. And while he was in the brothel, he got raped by a Polish soldier. I did not know any of this until after he died. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, what a story, what an incredible story. It broke my heart. It just broke my heart.
Oh, yeah.
So the first three chapters of my book are true. It's based on that. And then the rest of it is all fiction.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a lot of meat to start with.
Oh,
So,
yes.
yeah.
Yes. And I'm assuming that the rest of the book that's fiction is you imagining how your father dealt with that terrible 3 years.
How he dealt with that. And also, my father became a very well known furniture maker in Boston, which is
Oh.
true. He was very highly regarded.
Uh-huh.
And so in the book, I have this Polish soldier coming back into his life
Mm.
and my father seeking revenge.
Mm.
That's the fiction.
Uh-huh. That's the fiction part. Yeah.
But
Oh my goodness, you are one of like 3 or 4 authors who have a story like that, an immigrant story like that, and then the characters seek revenge. Yeah, one of them is by an Australian woman. She doesn't live in the United States, but she's the descendant of Armenian people who
well,
survived the Holocaust. But I
right.
mean, your father and the people living in Poland went through equally horrific things during World War II. So
He was gone by then.
he was gone by then. Oh, good.
He
Okay.
was
Well,
he was in this country when in 1920.
oh, good. But
Mhm.
still, he still had this horrific thing happen to him.
Yes.
And
And when he came here, his father had remarried, and the
ah,
person that his father remarried was equally as mean,
oh no.
horrible. And I had the good misfortune of meeting them and getting to know them. And they were even worse than you could imagine. They were horrible people.
Oh
In
dear.
fact, the only two names in my book that are not that are real
Mhm.
are the two of them, my paternal grandfather and his wife, because they deserve to be thrown under the bus for what they were.
Yeah. Oh, that's too bad though.
But all the
So
other names are made up.
so I'm assuming that your father never talked about this.
Never,
Never.
never.
And
No.
how did you find out about it after he died?
Well, his brother was still around, and
Oh.
his brother's children knew the story, and they told me.
Oh.
So my cousins,
Yes.
let me in on certain things. My father never would
Oh
have
no.
talked about that to me or anyone, openly.
Yeah, really.
He was a
Yeah.
very private person.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So in fact, my book started out as nonfiction. And
Mhm.
I have a brother who's a historian who's
Oh.
published 14 books.
Oh, wow.
His in fact, his latest book on Obama came out the same day as mine. Excuse me. And we also have the same birthday. So he insisted that my book not be, fiction. He said, you have to make it factual. And I started to research. And I said, you know what? I have a story in me.
Mhm.
Let this be my book. You write your books, I'll write my book.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And in fact, he loves it. He loves the book.
Oh, good.
So I was surprised. No, I said, yeah, you write yours. I begged him to write a dirty novel my whole life. I said, write that novel. And he didn't, but I did. But it's not a dirty novel, just a novel.
Yeah. Well, we have to do we write the books that are that come out of us and nobody else. I mean, it's not, oh, really, you can't tell someone to write a specific kind of book if that's not their experience or their talent or their
No, and in fact, I felt like there was a power over me because I
Ah,
wrote it like in less than a year.
wow.
I sent it to one publishing company, and in 3 days they signed me. And
Wow.
the book has gotten amazing reviews. I wish it had sold more, but I think it has to just catch on. But the reviews have been amazing. And what's interesting is all my friends and all the people that know me are shocked. What, you wrote a book?
But
Yeah.
you've been writing, you said you were writing short stories and poetry and things. Did you ever publish any of
No,
it
never,
or
never,
yeah.
never.
So,
But I had it in me. I always wanted to write something.
yes. Yes.
And once I sat down and started writing, it just came out of me and I was just able to do it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I didn't want to self-publish,
All right.
but you can't really go into Random House or, Simon and
Mm,
Schuster, and you can't get an agent when you've never written a book before.
right.
So I did my due diligence and I found out that there was something called hybrid publishing.
Ah. Uh-huh.
which is they're a publishing company and they do everything, the editing and absolutely everything. But they charge you a certain amount of money up front, which I thought was very little considering what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But then once it comes out, they don't take a dime until you've made your initial investment back.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So I figured, what do I have to lose?
Right.
So, and they didn't charge to read the manuscript, which is also interesting because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of companies want to
Oh,
charge you to read the manuscript.
oh yeah. Yeah. So where is it available?
It's available Amazon, Barnes and Noble's online, iTunes store. Um, it's linked. It's available wherever you can get a book.
Okay. So
Wherever
like,
books are sold, iTunes, Google Play. Uh, yeah,
and do you have an audio version of it too?
yes,
Or
I
is it,
do.
oh, you
Yeah,
do? Oh, good.
I have an audio version.
Okay.
And that was interesting too, because I went with a company and I had to audition readers.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Until you found somebody you liked. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And I did. I didn't want to read. I once listened to an audiobook that was read by the author. I won't say who it was, but
Mm-hmm.
it was so droll
Mm-hmm.
and boring, and I couldn't. It was hard to get through because
Right.
he was a terrible reader.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I published my book in independently in 2017, and I was going to do the audiobook because my background's in theater, but there are so many characters to keep track of, and there were dialects and things like that. And I got 15 chapters in, and I said, I can't keep track of which voice goes with which. I mean, I had it recorded for myself, but I said, no, 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 this is not my forte. I will eventually hire someone to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, do you have another book
Yes.
planned?
In fact, I am halfway through another book,
Oh,
which is
good.
nothing like this one. It's not a
Hmm.
historic fiction.
Hmm.
It's actually a crime thriller.
Oh,
And
that
I
sounds
had
fun.
done a podcast with a gentleman from Los Angeles,
Uh huh.
and he said, I hate historical fiction. He said, I've only read two in my whole life, and I just hate historical fiction. However, yours is one of the two, and I couldn't put it down. I love your book. He said, can I give your name to a publisher that I know quite well?
Oh, nice.
And he did. And the publisher called me the next day.
Oh, wow.
And so I've been working with them. I haven't signed anything yet because I
Hmm.
haven't been able to give them the amount of pages that they want.
Hmm.
But so far, the pages I've given them, they're very impressed with and they love it. So
Good.
I'm hoping to have it finished by Labor Day, but I'm not sure I'll have it done by then. It's
Yeah.
but soon after.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. So we'll have something to talk about.
Another time.
Another book on when I published the episode that we record for Story Power. That'll be great.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, it should definitely be done by then.
Yeah. So I'm also wondering some authors I'm friends with now who were guests on Story Power, they put their book into a contest. And I was wondering if you'd done anything like that, entered it into a contest.
Not really. I almost did at the very beginning
Mhm.
because I was like with on all these different websites, like
Mm.
Online Book Club had a contest. I'm on Online Book Club,
Mhm, mhm.
um, but I haven't. I haven't.
Yeah.
I just don't seem to have time. I'm retired, but I haven't got a minute to spare.
Oh, I know what you mean. I just retired a year ago this month, and yeah, I'm busier than I ever
I
was.
know. Isn't that
Yeah.
great?
Yeah.
What
Well,
were you? What did you do?
especially what did I teach?
What did you do? Oh, what did you teach? You were a teacher.
I was a teacher. I taught theater.
Oh,
So
wonderful. I am in my next life, I'm going to be a Broadway star.
oh yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I am addicted to Broadway musicals and
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I yeah, I have a master's in theater, and I worked in the theater for a while in Portland. I did stage managing and all the backstage stuff, except I didn't do construction in Portland. I did it in undergraduate school, but I
Portland,
made
Oregon.
Portland, Oregon. Uh-huh. We live in Arizona now, but
Ah.
at that
Oh,
time,
you must be hot.
oh yes. Although yesterday wasn't too bad. It was only 88 or something.
Oh,
But we're supposed to be having monsoon, no rain, hardly.
wow.
So, yeah, this is not a good year. Yeah. So anyway, I taught when I got to Arizona, I needed a job. So I did substitute teaching, and then the drama teacher at the high school found out that I had a master's and she was retiring, and so she encouraged me to apply, and I got that job. I worked at that school for 2 years, and then somebody else wanted my job, so I was maneuvered out. But I went to the border school, which is an hour away, and taught English and drama.
Oh,
And then I transitioned to college for 14
ah.
years. So I taught college. Yeah, and it was fun. It- Teaching it is very different than doing it.
Oh, I taught a medical assisting program at
Oh
at a
yeah.
paramedical school.
Oh yeah, because you had a medical or
Yeah,
biology no, what was your degree? Your
a
first degree?
laboratory science.
Oh, that's right, laboratory
And
science.
my first job out of college was
Uh-huh.
being an assistant to the research team that were the pioneers in fetal surgery.
Oh, wow. That must have been exciting.
And because now it's normal, it's
Yes,
absolutely common
right.
to do fetal surgery, but we we did it in let's see, it was 1968,
Wow.
and we were the pioneers at Boston Medical School.
Yeah, wow.
And
And
then
how
I
many
taught the medical assisting program.
and how many years did you teach?
Well, I did not know it at the time, but when I first started teaching, I was pregnant.
Oh.
So I taught for that year. And
Mhm.
then they called me after I had the baby and they said, if we develop a night school, will you teach it? If we do it
Ah.
at night? I said, absolutely. It was the best thing I ever did in my life. I love teaching,
Mhm.
love teaching.
Mhm. Mhm.
And yeah, that was probably my happiest time, was being in front of, because the students were between 18 and 50 years old. This was
Mhm.
post high school.
Mhm.
So we developed relationships and it was
Mhm.
wonderful.
Mhm. I enjoyed teaching college too, partly because there wasn't all the paperwork that you had to
Yeah.
do at high school. Although I still am friends with some of my high school students,
Yeah.
former high school students. We're friends on Facebook and we, exchange messages back and forth sometimes. So, but yeah, and college as well. So, yeah, but it was interesting to have because in Arizona, we have this thing where high school students junior and senior year can also take college. And we're a community college here in our area. And so I would have high school students sometimes in my acting class, and I would have older adults, so I had this wide range of students, and it was really fun. It was
Oh
fun.
yeah. I mean, that must have been great.
Yeah, I liked
I
it a lot.
Yeah,
But
I
I
just love theater.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fun. So then you got married, had children, and you were teaching night school while you were having your 3
Well, I
children?
was having my kids. So
Mhm,
actually
mhm.
being pregnant became part of my class because I would bring in the fetal monitor
Uh-huh.
and let my students, listen to the baby's heartbeat, and we would just follow, like what the baby looks like at 3 months, because we didn't have ultrasound back then.
Oh, right. Yes.
So it was a different thing. But yeah, it made it even more fun. But by the time I had my third kid, I said,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
staying home. Yeah.
Yes, we don't have any children, but I early on, right out of high school, I worked in Montessori schools and child development centers, and that, in fact, that was one of the jobs I had while I was getting my master's, was working in a child development center, and um, I was just exhausted at the end of the day. So I was so glad I didn't have children of my own because I could go home and rest.
Yeah, I was lucky that I was able to stay home during the day, with my
Mhm.
kids.
Mhm.
And I think I taught 3 nights a week.
Mhm.
The program ran, and then, but even when I worked during the day, the class would be from like 8 to 12.
Mhm.
So I was done very early. Of course, then there's papers to grade and
Right.
syllabuses to follow and things like
Mhm.
that. But
Yeah.
but I loved every minute of it. It was great.
Yeah. I enjoyed it too. So when
Yeah.
did you become an interior designer?
When my youngest child was 3 years old, and he was going to Montessori, actually,
Oh, yeah.
he was going to Montessori.
Uh-huh.
I hired two interior designers to do some work in my house, and they
Mhm.
had a showroom in my town.
Mhm.
And I would go into their showroom and I'd see what other people were doing. Oh, let me see what you're doing. Let me see what you're doing. Anyhow, they offered me a job.
Cool.
So I said, well, I can work part-time, but I have a 3-year-old, and if he's sick, I have to be able to stay home. So
Right.
they said, whatever you want, it's fine. So I worked for them for 3 years and got all my groundwork in, what
Ah.
normally most people don't have that opportunity, and that's
Mhm.
valuable.
Mhm.
And I had a following. When I left there, people were calling me, and I said, this is the worst profession in the world. I would never do this in a million years. This is horrible. And finally, I said, well, okay. But if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to go back to school and get my degree in design. But I had three
Yes.
kids, little kids. And I
Right.
said, so I took one course a semester at night for 9 years.
Wow.
And so
But
by the time the 9 years were up and I had my degree, I was already established in Boston.
yes.
And I didn't want anyone to know I was just graduating college with the degree, because I
Yeah.
did the degree for me. I wanted to be, you
Right.
know, I wanted to be legitimate. I didn't want to just be one of those housewives that makes things pretty. It's
Right. Yeah. So, what are some elements of design? Because my husband's a graphic artist. I'm sure that they are a little bit different. The
I can't draw to save my life.
right. But what
I
are
can do
the
a great floor plan, but I can't
yes.
draw.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
S-
Um,
So you're thinking of color and texture.
I have a great spatial
Ah.
relations thing in my head,
Uh-huh.
and I can walk into a room. I could tell you what size it is and where the furniture goes without even, thinking about it too
Mhm,
much.
mhm,
It's
mhm.
just, I have what's called synesthesia. I don't,
Oh,
do you
I've
know
heard of
about
that.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but explain it again. Yeah.
It's when you have certain sensories in your brain that are crossed, so that
Mhm,
when I see a number, I don't just see a number. I see a color associated with that
mm,
number, and I see a shape
mhm,
associated with that number.
mhm.
So let's say number 6 is soft and blue in my head.
Ah,
Number
uh-huh.
7 is sharp and green. And when I look at a room, it just makes sense to me. It just
Mhm,
all the elements that go into a room just seem to come together.
mhm,
So I never knew this. I never knew I had it. I never knew it was different than anything else
mhm.
until my son pointed out to me that he had it,
Ah,
because he was watching a show on TV that was highlighting synesthesis. I had never heard of synesthesis,
right. Yeah.
and now we're experts on it. We researched it and looked it up, and it's yeah, it explains a lot.
Mhm.
But
Now, are there
yeah,
types of synesthesis where
yes,
people smell? They have smells associated
yeah.
with what they're yeah,
It
okay.
if your sensors are crossed, it
Yeah.
could be anything.
Uh-huh. Mhm, mhm.
But fortunately, like for me, it's colors and shapes. And the other thing is that in school, as when I was younger, I
Mhm.
couldn't do math to save my life. I was terrible at math.
Mhm.
And when I went back to school for design, I had to take a math course,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I would just come up with I would just solve the problems like in a second in my head. And the teacher would say to me, "How did you get that right? It took you like 1 minute. You got it right. It's the right answer." I said, "I don't know." And then I realized that all those years in school, when they were telling me how to do the math, I couldn't do it that way. But in my head,
Right.
I'm able to skip a lot of steps.
Yes.
It just, so that's part of it too.
And in school, they always want you to prove that so you have to follow all the steps. And yes, that reminds me of the movie Gifted. Have you ever seen that movie? It has
Uh,
Chris Evans and what's the girl's name? The
I don't
we
know.
It's a really great movie. She is a math genius. She's what, 7 or something, and she's a math genius.
A
And
savant?
yeah, she's like that, but it might be sort of the same thing because the teacher the teacher is teaching math and she comes up with the wrong answer and the girl's like cuz she knows it's the wrong answer, and the teacher says, What's wrong with you?" And she says, "Well," she doesn't want to challenge the teacher, but she says, "That's not the right answer. This is the right answer." And the teacher goes and looks it up in the book and the girl was right.
Yeah.
So they know that she's well, her mother was a math genius, and Chris Evans plays her uncle, and her mother is dead now, and so he's her guardian. And it's just this really because he wants her to be a normal child, not just a math genius because he saw what happened to his sister. His mother
Yeah.
was not a good mom. She
Oh,
want so yeah. So I was thinking though that maybe it doesn't say that in the movie, but maybe it's something the same, similar.
I don't know when people first started to realize that there was such a thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. See, the title of your podcast is what really intrigued me because I have gotten into some very unusual situations in my life. And my explanation has always been like when people have said to me, "Weren't you frightened? Weren't you scared?" Hey,
Mhm.
if I can get a story out of something, I don't care,
Right.
as long as I'm
Right.
safe. And it gives me a good story because I think stories are just,
Hmm.
grab a story out of whatever you can.
Right.
So
Yeah.
story power. Yeah.
Well, I've always used them as teaching. My dad used them as teaching tools when we were children because he had dyslexia and couldn't read stories to us, but he was a genius at understanding human nature and why
Yeah.
why the characters do what they do. So he was teaching us those things,
That's
and
innate.
yeah. I mean, he was a genius. It's just that because he taught himself how to read. He's quit school and
Wow.
taught himself how to read, but he couldn't read out loud very smoothly. It was real difficult for him. So, yeah, so to me, that's how you understand human nature. Is That's one of the ways you can do it. It's not the only way, but to watch this a movie or a TV show or to read a book or
Yeah.
even news stories sometimes, and you're reading the news story and it's like they leave out this whole, well, wait a minute, what about this thing in this person's life or this possible thing that could have happened to them or and that's just something that I learned
Well, I
discussing.
think you have to listen.
Mhm. Mhm.
Listening is so important.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yeah.
And then being an actor, I mean, theater people analyze stories down to the minutest little detail. So so we were having a book club group. Our book club group is virtual, and on Saturday, and we had read The Water Dancer, and we were talking about one particular character, Corrine, who is white and who came from a wealthy family, but she's part of the underground movement in Tennessee. And some of the people were saying, "Oh, well, I don't understand how she got into that. Why did she, she came from this wealthy family." And I said, "Well, as an actor, I can say, well, maybe this happened. She's an only child. Her father wanted a son. Her mother didn't pay attention to her. So the only people who loved her were the the slaves on the plantation, and so she wanted to free them.
Wow. That's
But
a great story. I haven't read that.
oh, it's great. It's by Ta-Nehisi Coates, The
The
Water
Water
Dancer.
Dancer.
Yeah, and one of the characters in it is Harriet Tubman.
Oh,
So she's not the main character, but she's one of the characters in it.
so is it historical nonfiction or
No, it's
it's
fiction. It's
fiction?
his first fiction book, but it's kind of about the Underground Railroad and how it, develops in his little Hiram is the main character, and he's
I'm going to have to look that up.
oh, it's really great. I love it. And his writing is so lyrical. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Yeah, no, I just think that it's important for people to realize that there's no such thing as should have, could have, would have, because
Right.
I think those are three of the most harmful words in the English language.
Mhm.
You cannot go back
Right.
and redo what's been done. You can only move forward. So when I hear that, I say, no, 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 you can't do should have, could have, would have, because that doesn't
Mhm.
exist. And those are
Right.
negative thoughts. So I think if you want to do something, you should just go ahead and do it, or at least attempt to do it. There's
Mhm.
no wrong moves. There's no bad
Right.
mistakes.
Yeah.
We learn from our mistakes.
Exactly my
And
philosophy.
when because I was quite old by the time I published a book,
Mhm.
and I still don't know what my next career is going to be.
That's right. Well, it might be a writer. It sounds like it. You're working on a
Well,
second
I'm
book.
writing my second book. I'm writing my
That's great.
second book. If I can
Mhm.
get that published,
Mhm.
I'll be very happy. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not going to stop as long as I can keep going and
Yes.
do what I do. I'm writing, yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm loving it, and I'm
Yes.
meeting people like you.
Yes. Isn't
So
that fun? That's
I
why I
know.
do the podcast. I started it during the pandemic when we were using Zoom to teach from. And because the college closed, except for those classes like lab classes or like ceramics. You can't do ceramics on Zoom. Um,
Right.
or auto shop or welding, those kinds of things. Yeah, and I love it. And I do other things. I'm working on a second novel sequel to my first, and I have a blog which I started in 2013. That's the first thing actually I did was the novel and the
See,
blog.
you are proof
Yeah,
that there may only be 24 hours in a day, but you can make it 40.
right. Well, I do want to be a little bit retired and I do consume a lot of stories. So, but that's, part of the podcast is stories. So
I love doing these podcasts. I'm having a blast. I'm meeting fabulous people.
that's great. So I wanted to talk about your second book, where it was, when you think it's going to be published. Now, I forgot what the second book is titled.
I don't have a title for it yet.
Oh, isn't that the hardest part?
Yeah, I mean, the first book I did, all of a sudden one day the title just came to me.
Right.
And the second book has so many twists and turns to it that it has taken on a new life.
Oh, yeah.
So um, I am working on a title now,
I see.
but it's like it's coming along. It's coming along much faster now than it did at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
It's a different genre. It's a thriller. It's not a historical
Oh,
fiction.
right. Yeah. So talk a little bit about that, about your
It's
thriller.
it's dealing with human trafficking.
Oh,
So
I imagine you had to do a lot of research for that.
see, I'm addicted to true crime.
Oh, okay.
Like I love programs like Dateline, 48 Hours, 2020,
Mhm,
Investigation Discovery.
mhm.
I love true crime. I've always loved true crime. In fact, when I was a kid, I wanted to become a cop. I
Oh.
really wanted to be a policeman, and my parents were outraged. Absolutely not. No.
Oh, because you were a girl?
Because I was a girl and it was just unacceptable to be a cop. It was too dangerous.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can kinda see that, yeah.
So I didn't become a cop. But I've always loved crime. I've been attracted to the criminal mind, why people do these horrible, horrific things,
Mhm,
because it just so goes against my nature.
mhm.
And I've never really known any criminals, although although I've put myself in some harrowing situations, but it didn't excuse me, it didn't frighten me. Um, I actually sat next to a mule on an airplane from Houston
Oh.
who was carrying drugs in his stomach,
Oh.
and it burst while we were on the plane. And it was probably I was terrified at that moment because he literally jumped over me into the aisle where he was writhing in agony
Oh,
on the
no.
floor.
Oh, no, and did he make it?
Well, by the time we were coming in for a landing at the time. So
Uh-huh.
by the time we got to the tarmac, there was an ambulance there. The FBI was there and
Ah,
they came on board and dragged him off. So I don't know
you don't
whether
know
he
what
made it
happened?
or not.
Oh.
But that was probably it gave me a good story. I mean, I got off the plane with a great story, and that was more important to me.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So, do you read, like, crime novels and that kind of thing
Yeah,
too?
yeah,
Who's your
I
favorite
do.
author?
Oh, I just finished a book called The Other Misses.
The Other
The
Misses.
Other Misses by Mary. I forget. I don't have it in front of me,
That's okay,
but
I'll look it up.
I think it's Mary
Oh,
Kubica. But I don't like horror.
no, I'm not like that either. Well, and, I don't know, I've never read Kathy Reichs, but I watched every single episode of Bones. So, I have you read any of hers? Because it's a little different. Because she's a forensic anthropologist, not, not a crime detective.
So it's scientific. You can say it's
Mhm.
scientific.
Yeah, it is. I mean, she is a partner with an FBI agent, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, I've never read any of those. I think my mom gave me one. I think I have one on the shelf down there. I've
See,
just never.
I used to love Sidney Sheldon years and years ago. And in fact, when I was in labor with my very first child, I was reading a Stephen King book. Anyhow, it apparently human trafficking has really reached an all-time high,
Oh
and it's
no.
very prevalent in this country.
Oh no.
Yes, it is prevalent in this country, and uh, so doing research on it was really there's so much information.
Oh yeah.
But no matter what, it's the thought of having your child kidnapped
Mhm.
and not being able to find them because they've been taken out of the country and sold.
Mhm.
And it's the worst torture I think a parent can go through.
Oh really? Yes. So is it depressing sometimes when you're doing the research?
I try to make it, I try to make the outcomes good, happy.
Yeah.
I believe in paying your dues to the bad people
Mhm.
and having a better outcome to the poor victims.
Oh yeah, really.
From a parent's point of view, it's very easy to bring up. the emotion
Mhm.
that one would feel if your child had been taken.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
can't think of anything worse. Nothing.
Yeah, really. I know. That's true. Yeah. Except
So
for maybe
because
if they died, that might be worse, but maybe not because you don't know where they are. You know
you don't
they're
know where
alive, but
they are,
yeah.
you don't know where they are. They get drugged, and it's a horrible thing. But for some reason, people like to read about that kind of stuff.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
the interesting thing is that I started the book and I
mhm.
put the crime in the middle. I started the book leading up to the crime,
Uh-huh.
and I am talking to an editor,
Mhm.
and she made a suggestion to me. She said, rather than having the crime in the middle, why don't you have it on the first page
Oh.
to draw the reader in? And
Mhm.
after she suggested that, it flowed. It made so much sense to me. And then I could sit down and really start, typing it out.
Right.
It just came. But I have a way of writing that I don't map anything out. I don't know where it's going until it comes out of my head.
I have talked to several authors who do that same thing. I'm like that. I am, it's my personality type. I don't like to do outlines. I've never liked to do those
I don't
because,
do those.
because when I do them, it ends up different anyway.
You feel boxed in.
Mm-hmm.
If you do an outline, then you're sort of stuck on that outline.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so wherever it takes me, and I don't really
Right.
know, but it
Right.
seems to work for me that way. My first book was exactly like that. I had
Mm-hmm.
no idea where I was going with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's done incredibly well. I mean, it's gotten fabulous reviews.
Oh, yes. Oh, good.
Yeah,
And now it's been out about is it over a year now that it's
a
been
little
out?
over a year, little over a
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
I mean, the marketing hasn't been great,
Mhm.
but that's partly my fault. I'm learning a lot about marketing your first book, of marketing your book when you're an
Mhm.
unknown. However, I was contacted by a publisher
Oh.
who who said, I understand you're writing another book and we may be interested in publishing it if
Oh.
you're interested.
Uh-huh.
So that's given me the impetus to really forge along and get
Mhm.
it done.
Mhm.
My I would like to have it complete by Christmas
Yes.
so I can present it to them.
Yeah. Do they
But
require a certain amount of pages?
they want the whole thing. But they've been seeing it as it goes along.
Oh, yeah.
I've
Okay.
been sending them some as it goes along,
Oh, yeah.
and they said, I can't wait for the next chapter.
Keep
Keep it
reading, keep
coming, keep
reading.
it coming.
Yeah, right.
So
Keep writing, I mean. Yeah.
they're very unless I suddenly become boring. I think they're gonna. I think they'll publish. I think they're gonna publish it.
Yes. Yes. Oh, wow.
So that was again. I mean, that was. I didn't go looking for it. It just came to me,
Yes. Yes. I
and
was
I know that's
That's
unusual.
amazing. It is. It is unusual because I was talking to another author. She's also a ghostwriter, but
Ah,
she'd been working on this book and she was in like a book group, like an accountability book writing group. And the someone in the group said, this would make a really great movie.
yeah,
And she was like, "Oh, yeah, uh-huh, yeah." And then she got contacted by a producer
yeah.
who, said, "We want, I've seen your manuscript. I've seen because I don't think it had even been published quite yet." And so now she's helping write the screenplay.
Isn't that
So
amazing?
yeah, so this is the thing for you too, that they just love your book. I just love that.
I want a movie. I want it to be.
Yes.
Everyone tells me this would make a great movie. That's the
Yeah.
first book. I think the second one
Mm.
is probably even more marketable as a
Mhm.
thriller.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
But I never envisioned myself being in this situation at my stage of life.
But do you finally get to do what you love, though?
I've always done what I've loved, you know.
But
I've
you were,
always loved I've always loved what I've done, I should say. That's
yes.
yeah.
Well, yes, and that's great. But for you, it seems like you taught and you loved that. And then so then you were an interior
Designer,
designer
yes,
and
still.
you loved that. And yeah, it's you're doing it the way I should have done it. I do multiple things right now and it's just too much. I'm deciding to cut out a couple of things so that I
Yeah.
can, just concentrate on one or two things. So now you get to be a writer. That's so cool.
If it makes you happy, do it. If it's stressful,
I
cut it out.
know. That's
Life
right.
is too short.
I know. You're right. Yeah. Because my mom and dad came from that generation where you just worked so that you could put food on the table. They were born during the depression. So
Yeah.
so that's, I'm not sure that they absolutely loved what they did. Uh Sometimes I think maybe they hated it. My
Yeah.
mom specifically. My mom worked from before I was born. Um but you know, that's I guess that's why I decided I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to work at things that I want to work at.
Yeah. I had a very negative mother. She was clinically depressed, in and out of hospitals.
Oh,
Yeah. And she only told me what I couldn't do. Oh, you could never do that. Oh, you could never do that. And so I set out to prove her wrong.
right.
And I did,
Yes. Yes.
because I
Yeah.
saw what I did not want to become. I did not want to become a negative, depressing person.
Yes. Right.
So it worked in reverse for me.
Yeah, that's great though. So when you finish this book,
Yeah.
are you planning on doing more crime novels?
You know, I'm really old. You may not know it, but I am really old. And I'm taking it one day at a time.
Mm,
I want to keep writing.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, the arthritis is setting in, and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to keep writing. I would love to pursue having a movie out of the
Mm-hmm.
first book or this, whatever. I'm just taking it one day at a time. I think I have more books in me
Yes.
because the
Yeah.
mind is constantly going, it doesn't stop.
Right. Yes. Well, and if the publishers love your book, I'm sure that they will be looking for to help you advance it in any way that you can. Maybe even
Well, it's interesting because I did a podcast a few weeks ago with a gentleman from Germany. He's really Australian,
uh-huh.
but um, he's living in Germany, and it turns out that he is a film producer.
Oh, cool.
And I said, good, because we can start filming we can start now. Let's
Yeah.
get it, let's cast it. And he said, send me your book, and I did. And so he just recently he got the book last week,
Mm-hmm.
and he's going to keep me informed after he reads it.
Yes, that you're talking about the story of, right?
The story of, right, because
Yeah.
this book isn't done yet. But
Yeah.
this book I am feverishly working. I would like it done by Christmas. That's my goal. My initial goal was to have it done by Labor Day,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't. I didn't have it in me.
Yeah. Until,
I put the crime on the first page,
yeah. Right. Yeah.
and
Yeah. That's
so
right.
now my husband is my best barometer, because when I get a few pages done, I give it to him.
Mm-hmm.
He's a voracious reader,
Mm.
and he's loving it.
Oh, that's good. That's
So I said, I
great.
know you love me, but you don't have to love the book. And he said, no, I love it. I love it.
Oh, good.
So
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, because you need that to keep going, to keep writing. You have to have those cheerleaders, I think.
I've got so many. I've got so many, and everyone supports me. It's wonderful. Anyhow, I do. I have a lot of cheerleaders, and I'm very fortunate. I have a brother who is a historian.
Oh, right. You talked about him.
You're right, and he was very disappointed that I was writing fiction. But now that he's read it and he's seen what I
Oh,
can do,
hmm.
he's very proud of me and very encouraging.
Oh, good. Now, I meant to ask you, what are some of the titles of his books?
Um, let's see. His his big book was the post presidency from Washington through Clinton.
Oh,
That was his latest book that came out the same day as mine,
mhm.
is on Obama.
Oh,
And a lot of them, let's see, he is an expert on Jimmy Carter.
oh.
So he's
Now, what?
written several books on Jimmy Carter.
So, what's your brother's name? Because I'm going to look up his books.
Okay, Burton, Burton,
Uh huh.
Kaufman, Kaufman.
Got it. Okay, I'm going to go look
He's
up
got
his books.
14, I think he's got 14 books under
Oh
his
my
belt.
goodness, 14. That's a lot of
Yeah.
research.
Oh my God, yes. And that book from the post presidency from Washington through Clinton was, I think it's 700 pages.
Oh my
It
goodness.
took him a long time to write that book. And that was the first book that he wrote for commercial purposes.
Mm.
And his agent wanted him to go on a book tour for that one, but his wife had ALS and she was dying. So
Oh.
he couldn't do it.
Oh.
Yeah. Um, but my nephew is an author.
Oh, wow.
His son is also a historian,
Mhm, mhm.
and he's written many books. So yeah, I guess it's in the blood.
Yeah, sounds like it. Sounds like it's in the family.
I
Runs in the
think
family.
I think so. My son, 15 years ago, my son's colon burst, and he was on life support. So he was in the hospital for a very long time. And while he was there, he's the kind of kid that turns lemons into lemonade. So he wrote a small book, a pamphlet, and it's how to survive a hospital stay. And the premise of the book is don't piss off the nurses. And the doctors loved it, and a lot of them put it in their office waiting rooms because it would be like number one, excuse me, don't piss off the nurses, and then it'd be like number 15, don't piss off make sure you don't piss off the
Yeah,
nurses.
really. Oh, that's funny. I love it.
And now he's writing a book now.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
So yeah, I guess yeah,
It must run in the family.
it's in the family. But
Yeah.
I'm just really hoping that my second book gets the same kind of reviews as the first one did.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it sounds just as exciting and compelling in a different way.
Yeah, child human trafficking,
Hmm.
and their children, and
Yes.
they're ripped out of their beds,
Oh,
and yeah, and it happens. That's the frightening part, is that this happens.
oh, wow. Yeah. I years ago I taught at a border school, border town, and it was
Mhm.
high school. It was right when social media was starting to become popular. And it was MySpace back then. It's before, I think it was before Facebook. And there was a girl at the high school who met somebody on MySpace or Facebook or whatever it was, and she thought he was her friend, and she met him, and then he kidnapped her. Fortunately, they got her back pretty quickly, But that was really scary for the whole entire community because it could have it happens a lot in Mexico where people get
Yeah.
kidnapped. I don't think he was Mexican. I think he was an American citizen, but yeah, that was very scary.
But they take them to Mexico.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear of the Boston Strangler?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Well, I lived around the corner from one of the victims,
Oh, no.
and that was Albert DeSalvo. That was horrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Next street over.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, really.
So yeah, we couldn't go out at night. Our parents wouldn't let us walk in, after dark or go
Right.
anywhere.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like I probably should have studied the human mind more than I have because I'm intrigued, really intrigued by it.
Mhm.
How somebody can hurt or torture or do terrible things to people. I mean, when I can't stand to see an animal suffering,
I know. Yeah.
and what's going on right now with the Palestinians and Israel
Mhm.
is horrifying. Just
Yeah,
it's terrible.
I know. And before that, Russia and Ukraine and
Russia and Ukraine, that's still
yeah.
going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I don't understand it either. Uh and I'm like you. I do not like horror. I'm not into mob stories or anything like that. But for some reason, I saw the movie Red Sparrow with Jennifer Lawrence, and it's based on a book. And there are 3 books in the series. They're spy novels. And the man who wrote them, I think his name is Jason Matthews. And he worked in the CIA for 33 years, and then he wrote these 3 books. And Red Sparrow's the first one. Unfortunately, he died of some terrible disease. So we're not going to get any more books, but I'm in the middle of the second one. And it's like, I don't, I don't understand that world, but the way he writes about it, it's like you understand the spies are always on edge. They're always checking. They're all, it's like they can't ever relax.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and the main character is a woman who was a ballerina and got injured, couldn't dance anymore, and her uncle just happened to be part of the SVR, which is the CIA equivalent in Russia, and he kind of coerced her into working for him, and so, but she just loves Russia, but she doesn't like what the oligarchs and the leaders are doing, and so she becomes an American asset, and it's just
This
like
is fiction.
it's fiction, but he was a CIA agent. Yeah. So it's like, sometimes, I'm reading along and, a couple of times people have sent assassins off to kill her and, and she survives. And there, of course, there's an American man who is her contact, her CIA contact, and they almost got killed in the first book. The second book, I just last night I was reading, she almost got killed again. So yeah, it's really, oh, I love it.
Do you read before you go to sleep?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Do you dream
Sometimes
about being in the book?
sometimes I do, not always. It just depends. Kind of depends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's just really, I have not read very many spy novels. I've watched spy movies like, Carrare and, things like that, or Jason Bourne, or I don't know. But yeah, I don't read those very often. So
No, I love blood and guts. Murder, mayhem. Don't like torture,
no,
but yeah, I don't like to see anything suffer.
yeah.
That's why I don't know how I'm writing about it. Yeah, but it will have a not too terrible ending
Oh, that's good. Good.
because I can't live with that.
Yeah, I can understand that. I wouldn't be able to live with it either. Yeah. Got to have it come out okay.
Where are you located? I don't.
I live in southern Arizona. We live a mile from the border of Mexico. We can see the fence from our back house.
Oh,
Yeah. It was the first, there was the George W. Bush fence, and now there's the wall fence.
does it come as far as you? Does it?
Yeah. It goes, the Huachuca Mountains are just west of us a little bit, about 5 miles or maybe 10 miles. So it goes up to the edge of the Huachucas. I don't think it goes through the edge of the mountains because the mountains, jut down into Mexico too. But I remember when I was teaching uh, English, that's when the George W. Bush fence was going up. And so I gave my students an assignment, to create a like newspaper cartoon thing about the wall. Excuse me. And the funniest one was somebody from Mexico coming in to sign up to build the fence so that they could make money to send home to Mexico. It was so funny.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
But
we're running out of time. Do you have
okay.
anything else you want to say?
Lucinda, I am just working on my second book. I will come up with a title.
Oh, good.
It'll suddenly come to me.
And then you can tell me what it is because your episode's not even going to air until December 20th, I think it is.
Right. I think it's December 20th.
Yeah.
It's on Podmatch. But okay, so I have a task at hand
Mm-hmm.
to come up. The first book, because the main character's name is Jacob in the first book,
Uh-huh.
um, originally it was Jacob's story, Jacob's this, but there are so many books out that have the name Jacob in the title, believe it or not, there are. And then all of a sudden it came to me that all these immigrants that came over to this country at the beginning of the 20th century have a story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
So I came up with the story of ... And the three dots signify all the untold stories that are yet to be told.
Right.
So it just came to me one morning, and I'm hoping the same thing will come here too, because it has to be a title that will interest you.
Yes, that will grab you right away. Yeah.
Yeah, that will grab you. And like for the first book, I designed the book cover, which I understand most companies won't allow you to do that. But I had a very clear picture in my mind of what I wanted the cover to be. And I have gotten a lot of positive feedback on that.
Oh, that's good.
And so I'm hoping the second book will be as easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll help you with that, the publishers. That'll be cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
but it's such a delight talking to you.
I know. I'm so happy that we did this again. And then I have more from the podcast, from the Patreon, that I can merge with this and make our conversation longer.
And I will come up with a title.
Yeah. And then just let me know. Yeah. That'll be great.
Absolutely.
And then
And
let me know when it's going to be published too, so that I can put that in the show notes.
I hope to know by then.
Oh, yes.
Well, you've just given me the impetus to just get it done by tonight.
Well, you'll be up late.
Yeah. But anyhow, thank you again for having me.
Oh, thank you for talking to me again. I really enjoyed it.
Me too. I do. Thank you. And we'll speak again.
Yes, hopefully soon.
Hopefully. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the show. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend and give us a rating and or review on your favorite podcast app. It will help people find us. I invite you to join my Patreon community at patreon.com/storypower, all one word. Or if you like, you can subscribe to Story Power on Apple Podcasts. It's my aim to build a community where we discuss the stories we love and talk about what we learned from them. I offer extra audio content and story suggestions to my patrons on both platforms. Remember, as Philip Pullman said, after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world. Let's spread the story love. Until next time, this is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden. Thanks for listening.